What the hell happened to guitar solos? Nowadays, we don't see them hardly anywhere, and when I do see them, they kind of just manifest in lines like this. That just kind of have a nice textural approach and actually do make a song quite better. But what happened to just those wailing guitar solos you used to hear over and over and over through the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s that had just gone from glorified to just the bottom of hell? So to figure this out, we're going to have to kind of go back in time. In the 70s and 80s, guitar music was something sort of different. The rise of the electric guitar came and people started doing more creative things with it. We already had Hendrix and people before, but people were inspired and they were making really, really great stuff. And that kind of started to bleed into the 90s. But with kind of grunge killing off a little more of that 80s stuff, we kind of got a more simplistic approach to guitar solos, but they were still there and very, very present. Especially when you get to songs like Alive, Smashing Pumpkins songs, they're very present, but we do see that they got shorter and a little simpler, and I personally think that this was a very, very nice touch from the 80s because it was more easy to digest. I felt like it really added to the story of the song and didn't kind of become the highlight. And a lot of people, I think, share that exact same opinion I do. There's still a good time and place for those shreddy guitar solos, but those melodic ones really started to bleed through. We got to the 2000s, like the White Stripes and Icky Thump, we start to see this melodic shift come into play. And of course, with bands getting really popular, like Fall Out Boy, Blink-182 raising, Green Day's resurgence in the early 2000s, that pop punk energy and pop punk sound fucking ruled the landscape, and they rarely featured guitar solos, and when they did, they sounded nothing like the ones in the 70s and 80s. And that's not a bad thing. That is just how the music was structured. It was fast, it was energetic, and that didn't have the place for anything more than kind of those really, really cool through lines. And the other problem with this is no other genre really features guitar solos. The other ones like to leave it to synths or just have nice, big, long strumming parts like they do in country. And no genre is wrong for that, but it does explain why we see the guitar solo a lot less. But we can look into a different subset of music that is super, super popular that has the opportunity for it, but it doesn't take it. And that's going to be pop music. Most of these songs still have guitar parts. For example, 2024, Sabrina Carpenter, Espresso, that shit was everywhere. There's a guitar part playing through almost that entire song, and it is left to just chords and the bass takes over, which is pretty fucking cool because it's a great song. And we kind of see this in other songs too. The guitar is very present and it's not dead. It is playing a lot more of a rhythmic and textural role. And texture isn't necessarily a guitar solo because a guitar solo takes over instead of the lead vocal melody that songs are focusing on so much these days because it makes them catchier, and a lot of people seem to latch onto the emotional sequence of a song when the spoken word is more at the forefront, which is very different compared to the 60s and 70s, where we kind of see a lot more to the guitar in comparison to the voice. So with that change in mind, how can we kind of analyze these more recent solos? What we can do is we can see how these melodic contour lines like this seem to be a hell of a lot more common in songs that reach the charts and just songs being made everywhere. And this was happening in the 2000s. And this is going to be really interesting as we bleed into the 2010s because we see bands like KG Elephant and a lot of indie people take off and they never re-adopted that guitar solo. The ones they did have were a lot more drawn out and melodic, just like the vocal lines were. And just like the vocal lines, they kind of shared a similar contour. Almost all of those guitar solos, you could speak out the pitches and it sounds very, very natural. It's not like Comfortably Numb or Hotel California, where we're kind of going wow. It's kind of more of a trackable da-da-da-da-da, something more like that. And that is really where the bread and butter came in for pop music. A lot of people were chasing what was popular and what got stuck in people's heads. And obviously, this is way harder to track than something with a more simple melodic line, more broken up, and just and more broken up. But there is something really, really interesting in songs like Shut Up and Dance, where the guitar is still this super, super memorable part, almost like the former guitar solos were, but instead of being, 20, 40 bars, it's like 4. And this is kind of how the guitar solo has evolved. It is still present, but sometimes it's more in the background. And what's perfect about this is they are shorter. So you have to compact what you want to say and keep it short and concise. So there's no more of these running through lines that don't really matter to the story. And it's all killer, no filler for it to be good. Because a lot of the solos because a lot of those drawn out solos, except for the outliers like Hotel California, Comfortably Numb, Stairway to Heaven, they actually really aren't good 100% of the time. And that's the truth a lot of guitar snobs don't face. Those that keep an open eye do know that there are always times in a guitar solo that are better than other times. But when you reduce it to 4 bars, 1 bar might be a little bit of that filler anticipation that make those other 3 bars so good. So the guitar solo isn't necessarily dead, but it's been readapted into something that is so much shorter and so much more concise, but it really gets the same point across. There's just not as much of that glory and awesomeness that happens. And there still is a huge downside to that is really crushing for guitar players and kind of the community of concerts. And that's when you're listening to something live and it's drawn out, it does sound fucking cool. I've seen it firsthand. Those drawn out solos live sound really awesome because it gives the musicians space to be musicians, which is where there's the difference between recording and performing. Performing these long solos, giving everyone opportunities to bounce off each other, show your talents is awesome. When you're in that studio, what we're seeing right now with kind of pop music over the years is that keeping things concise and stuff people actually want to listen to is just a better strategy business-wise, and that's really why we see it over and over and over again. And a lot of these people that do make those decisions business-wise have these live shows where they might feature some of those longer solos, but that is kind of dying out and is something that really needs to come back, because one of the biggest problems I think there is with the touring industry is there's just kind of a lack of musicianship that we're seeing, because there's just a reduction of musicianship in these shows that keep coming up. And of course, if you want more content like this, subscribe for more.